So welcome to Blazing Gamer, and in this episode of tutorial series of Oops with Java, we'll be going over loops. Loops come in handy whenever you need to repeat a set of instructions quite a lot of times, when it could be like you could copy and paste an instructions 2 or 3 times to repeat it 2 or 3 times, but when the iteration number is quite high, like 10, 100 or even thousands, it's better to use loops. So there are 3 kinds of loops in Java, basically the for loop, the while loop, and the do while loop. There's another kind of loop which is the for each loop, which we'll be going over when we go over arrays. So in this episode we'll be going over the for loop. Well, in theory, whatever you can do with the for loop, you can do with the while loop also and a do while loop also, but they all have some special cases where it would be better to use for loop over while loop or something. So let's just get rid of these for now and we'll focus on the for loop. So for loop is useful when you know before the loop the number of iterations you need to do. Like before the loop starts, I know that I need to run the loop for 10 times or 100 times. That's when for loop can be useful. Also, there are many more applications where for loop may be more useful than a while loop, but you may get when to use for loop or while loop with practice. So, but generally when you know the number of iterations beforehand, you can use the for loop. So this is the basic syntax for the for loop. You use the keyword for and open these parentheses. And there are 3 parts inside the parentheses: the initialization statement, in which you can initialize the loop control variable. It could be of any data type you want, and you can initialize to any value. Then the termination statement. This is the condition that would be checked on each iteration. If it's false, the loop will run. If it's true, the loop will exit. No, if it's true, the loop will run. If it's false, the loop will exit. Sorry for that. And this is the step index, or the after each iteration what should happen to the anything. You can put multiple variables here. So after each iteration I will be increased by 1. So I can have anything inside here, and just do some print lines, and if I do Control Shift F10 and it will just build the project, and you'll see that I have printed hello 10 times because the for loop goes 10 times. Now there are many things and to the for loop, like all these 3 parts are actually optional. So if I remove all these, this also is a valid for loop, but this for loop would iterate infinitely. So if I write an SOP here and just put in hello, okay, and you can see the IntelliJ is also complaining about it. Let's just run this. This may crash IntelliJ because, yeah, as you can see, this runs infinitely. So all of these parts are either optional. You can even declare the variable before if you don't want the variable to be out of the scope of for loop, and we'll go over what is scope in later videos. But scope is basically if I define a variable inside these braces, then this variable is accessible only inside these braces. I can't access I outside of this. So if I define I here equals 0 and I try to access I outside of these braces, I equals 10, it would say that cannot resolve symbol I because I is defined inside these braces. Actually, it may not appear that inside these braces, but the for loop initialization variable scope is always the scope of the for loop. So you need to keep in mind the scope, and if you want to have I to be accessible here, you can basically define int I equal to 0 here and skip the initialization part and directly go for I less than 10 and I++, and this would work. But do keep in mind these semicolons are compulsory. You need to have 2 semicolons inside the for loop. And similarly, the termination condition can be, if you don't want to use it, we can remove this also and do like this. If I greater than 10 actually, that's when we want to terminate, we can just put a break. Now what break does is, it will come out of this loop. So if I just run this loop, Ctrl Shift F10, as you can see, it will print hello 10 times. The variable is initialized here and the condition check of the loop is done here. I can even move this I++ down to here. And this case will run 11 times because I++ is happening after the condition check. So if I just press Shift F10, and if I count this 1, 2, 3, 4, no, it will run 10 times only because the loop goes in that way. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, how much times did it run? You can keep in mind. So this is 11 line breaks. So yeah, it ran 11 times because iteration will keeps on going and there's more to it than equal to 10 because we aren't using the condition of equal to. So these conditions you will get used to when you use them. But basically you can even have 2 variables inside a single for loop. So I can do like int I equals 0, comma j equals 0. That would work, and I can do 2 termination conditions also. I can give, even it can be 2 termination conditions. Any boolean expression will be valid here, just same as we give for if statements. We give a boolean expression, we can do logical ands and ors here. So if you do this, and we can do I++ and j++, we'll have to put a comma here. So this is also a valid for loop which uses 2 variables in its iteration. So we can just put print j out and get rid of this. And if we run this, so as you can see, we get the numbers from 0 to 9. And you can have nested for loops also, just like nested if statements. Nested for loops are equally possible. So we can do this I less than 10, I++, take this out, do for loop for I, j less than 10, and do this. Now this will run 100 times. So we can just print like I and j, because first time this loop runs, then inside this loop will run 10 times. Then again when I becomes 1, this loop will run again 10 times. Then I becomes 2, this loop will run again 10 times. So just if I run this, so as you can see, we get numbers from 0 to 99. So in generally you shouldn't do nested for loops more than 3 because the complexity can increase significantly, because just running these 2 loops for 10 times, I'm already at 100 iterations. If I do another 10 times inside this one, that's 1000 iterations. And if I just increase this to 100, that's 100,000 iterations, and that can be quite taxing because right now we are doing only some print lines. But if you have another more major operation inside here, that could be quite taxing on the system. So go ahead and practice with for loops, and there's nothing much more to it rather than just keep in mind these 3 parts of the for loops and that these 2 semicolons are necessary. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something, and please do leave a like and subscribe for more videos. In the next video we'll be going over the while loop.